Here.
Regent Rodalla.
Here.
Regent Robinson.
Here.
Regent Kraus.
Here.
Regent Albrecht.
Here.
Commissioner Christian.
Here.
Governor Bullock is going to join us a little later this morning. And Superintendent Juneau.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is approval of the minutes from the January 7th, 2014 meeting. Regent Regala has moved. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no? The ayes have it. I'd like to now turn the microphone over to the two presidents or the commissioner if there are any introductions in their respective universities that they would like to have announced at this point. President Cruzado.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to call Marsha Riley, our dean from City College. She has a very important introduction to make this morning. Thank you.
It is with great delight that I introduce to you the new Associate Dean for City College MSU Billings. We're excited to have Dr. Florence Garcia join us as our Associate Dean. She earned her undergraduate degrees at MSU Billings, Eastern Montana College, and her doctoral work is done at MSU Boulder. She worked in Metropolitan State College in Minnesota, also here in Bozeman and in Billings, most recently as the president of Fort Peck Community College. I'm excited to have her with us. She's a huge supporter of two-year higher education, so please help me welcome her.
Welcome. Further introductions, President Engstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I have three introductions and announcements that I would like to make this morning if I could. First of all, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Barry Dunn, who is the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Biosciences at South Dakota State University. He also holds the position there of the Director of the Extension Service at SDSU. Barry is here this week as part of the Millennium Leadership Initiative of one of our professional organizations, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities. So Barry is in a leadership development program, and part of that program is to form a mentor relationship with a sitting president. And so Barry is spending the week at the University of Montana, and being someone who is interested in exciting activities, he wanted to pair that with attending one of our Regents meetings. And so he is here with us. So would you welcome Barry Dunn, please? Mr. Chair, second announcement, I would like to make sure that you all know that Chancellor Dick Story from UM Western has announced to me his retirement effective this August. And so Dick has served as Chancellor of UM Western now for 10 years. He's done an outstanding job, and we will no doubt have an opportunity later to celebrate that with him. But I did want you to join me in thanking Chancellor Story for his service this morning. If you would indulge me a moment to Chancellor Story.
Chancellor Story.
Thank you, members of the board. Thank you, Royce. Royce asked me to say something which I'm inclined not to do, so I will be brief in the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I think I've seen three recent signs that it's time to retire. Last night at dinner, when a friend of mine told the wait person that he would have the same thing that my dad was having, and nobody laughed. This morning, when the Dean of Students drove us right up to the front door so I wouldn't slip on the ice. But mostly in the words of George Dennison. On campus one day, I was talking with some students not just a few days ago and asking them the same kind of questions we all do about where you're from and what's your major and so forth. And so finally I said, "Do you know who I am?" And they kind of looked at each other, and the more bold one of the three said, "No. But if you'll hand us your wallet, we'll find your driver's license, we'll look up your address, and we'll take you home." Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have one more announcement that I would like to make. Last Friday, as I think most of you know, we closed the university campus in Missoula because of extreme snow and wind in our community. And it became impossible very early on to keep roads plowed and sidewalks cleared, and it was quite a dangerous situation. And so we called off campus. And first, I want to just express my public appreciation for all of those employees, faculty, and staff members who went above and beyond the call of duty last weekend to make the campus safe and to work around the clock getting the campus back open for us. As I think most of you have read in the news, at the end of Friday in Missoula, we had an avalanche. And that avalanche took place on Mount Jumbo, which is less than a mile away from our campus. It was a very dangerous situation. The avalanche swept down Mount Jumbo and crashed into the home of one of our Regents Professor Emeritus, Fred Allendorf. Knocked the home off and buried in the avalanche 3 people. The young boy was found early on, and he has since returned home and is recovering fine. Fred Allendorf, our Regents Professor Emeritus, was found a couple of hours later. I visited with Fred the other night. He is recovering well, physically battered, but he will recover. Tragically, his wife, Michael Colville, did not survive, and she passed away earlier this week. And I would like you all, if you would, to just join me in a moment of silence for Michael. Very much.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if I could ask John Seck to make a announcement on behalf of the system.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome the new president of Miles Community College, Dr. Stacy Klippenstein, who of course served the system for a long time as Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at MSU Billings. Dr. Klippenstein.
Chancellor Limbaugh.
Thank you, Chairman Tuss. It's my pleasure on behalf of the entire community of Havre and Montana State University Northern to introduce our new Vice Chancellor and Provost, Dr. William Rugg. Bill? Bill has been with us since February the 17th. He was most recently the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. He has more than 35 years experience in higher education, has served as a Provost, a Chief Academic Officer, a Dean, an Associate Dean, a School Director, a wide range of experience which I believe will serve both Northern and the entire system very well. So welcome, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further introductions, seeing none. We have many important issues to cover over the next day and a half. From a look at our agenda, we'll be privileged to learn more about the many ways that our system's 47,000 students are well served by our dedicated faculty, staff, and administrators. It is always exciting when we have the opportunity for a statewide dialogue on the importance of high-quality education. I look forward to this dialogue both today and tomorrow. This meeting is a little different than typical. Board Chair Angela McLean resigned her position as Regent last month to join Governor Bullock's leadership team as Lieutenant Governor. We all thank Lieutenant Governor McLean for her leadership, dedication, and passion for student success. I can think of no stronger advocate for education and for students at every level than Angela McLean. We wish her well with this exciting new chapter. The Montana University System will arrange for an opportunity to thank and honor Angela for her service to our students at an appropriate time in the coming weeks. Under board procedure, if the elected chair leaves the board, the elected vice chair serves as the board's presiding officer until elections are held. I am privileged to serve in this capacity and note that elections will be held as usual at our May meeting. There are many reasons to be excited about higher education in Montana, and the reasons are growing. This board had an opportunity last month in a planning session to focus on the great products and services our colleges and universities are delivering to Montanans. As we move forward, I am confident that all Montanans will be as excited as we are about our education system. Here is a short list of some major items. The Complete College Montana initiative that will help increase the percentage of Montanans that hold a college credential. College Now and workforce development initiatives to continue growing the offerings of two-year education, a key producer of a trained workforce. Dual enrollment and dual credit expansion to provide Montana families more low-cost options for their children to earn college credit during high school. All three of these are major initiatives that will better prepare students for success, reduce time to degree, improve college affordability, and be responsive to Montana employers. Other exciting priorities include performance-based funding to support institutional outcomes, a robust research enterprise, agriculture and energy initiatives, American Indian and minority achievement, a focus on veterans, and access and affordability for all Montana students. In short, we're covering a lot of ground. We are grateful to our partners in the legislative and executive branches for investing in higher education. We are especially appreciative of the commitment of our faculty, staff, professionals, and administrators for doing the great work that instills this confidence. It is truly for the greater good of Montana students, families, businesses, and communities. Finally, we have a birthday to celebrate. Montana PBS turns 30 years old this year. They're a great partner of the Montana University System, and I want to thank them for 3 decades of producing television worth watching. It gives me a great deal pleasure right now to turn the mic over to Dean Susan Wolf, Chief Executive Officer of Great Falls College, for her welcoming remarks. Dean Wolf.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner, members of the Board of Regents, President Cruzado, President Engstrom, and all of my fellow administrators across this great state. It's certainly my pleasure to welcome you back to Great Falls College, MSU. You were just here last May. You may have noticed, although this morning with all the ice, you were hopefully paying attention to where your car was going. But we do have 2 new monument signs out on the campus with our new name as part of the College Now and the renaming process that we went through. And I just have to lodge a little bit of a protest here. I just learned yesterday, I was telling the commissioner this, that the Regents will not be back to Great Falls for 4 years, and we love hosting you. We love having you here, and that just feels like it's too long. So I hope you can come back more quickly than that.
Be careful what you wish for.
I know. But we truly do like having you here. I also want to recognize, we learned this week, and we have over the last several weeks, the incredible giving nature of people who grew up in this state. And both of our flagship institutions, and I know our other campuses as well, are the benefactors of that. So again, I really want to recognize that we live in a wonderful state where people want to give back to us because it makes such a difference in all the students and the citizens that we serve. So congratulations to everyone. The newspapers have been full of all of these announcements, and I'm just so pleased to be here. I want to give a huge shout out for our college facilities folks who have made this campus look beautiful. They always do, but they work so hard to make you welcome. Our IT folks who set up a special network in this room so that you all can access the internet and have what you need technologically. I want to thank our food service and the bookstore. And I hope you take a few minutes today during breaks to go into the bookstore. They have some new products there that you might be interested in finding. So please do that. We also made sure that we had plenty of popcorn for snacks for a particular person who sits at the table, President Cruzado, and M&Ms for President Engstrom. So had to make sure that we take care of them as well. So, and in honor of the fact that we have both sides of the state here, I just want to show President Engstrom that on my notebook, President Cruzado can't see this side. But then on the other side, we've got the cats. For those who haven't been here on campus, the restrooms, if you go out this door, you can either go to your left or to the right. That's an important thing to know. Coat rack out there, and I think you found that already. We were hoping to have tours this afternoon, but the agenda may not allow that. You're going to see a video at the end of my presentation. We are very fortunate to be one of 3 sites in the North American continent to have a Geo Nanslo Science Lab. It's a remote lab, high-powered microscopes. And if there are people here at the end of the day that want to take a tour before going to the reception, if you'll go to the desk down at the atrium, down this direction, we can take that tour. Or tomorrow, after the meeting's over, to tour that lab. We've also heard today that ADF International also would be open to having tours tomorrow afternoon. We could help make some arrangements for that. So let me know if you're interested in doing that. Tonight, the reception, we're very pleased to let you know, is at the Charles Russell Museum. This is very exciting because you'll get to see the exhibit for the Western Art Week. And because it's also business after hours, we have arranged for you to leave your car in a parking lot. Let me see if I can find it. At 14th Street North and Central Avenue. And we'll have a trolley there, shuttle, to take you back and forth. I highly recommend that you do that because parking is going to be very, very difficult. If you need more information about that, Lorene can help you with that. So board members, at your place, you have found several documents, one being a postcard announcing our 2013 annual report. It's available on the web now. A postcard with our new license plate design. So if you need a new license plate, we'd welcome you to go get one of ours. A flyer from one of the Black History Celebration events, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. We also have a flyer for the first ever high school exchange. We had heard from one of our faculty that the local high school science teachers didn't know that we taught science here or that we had science labs. So, you know, we often say that the high school counselors need to be the ones to know what we do so they can advise students here. Well, the high school faculty are the ones who spend most of their time with those students, so we're very excited about that. And I now would like to recognize and introduce several people here on the campus, and we'll hold applause till after I'm done. I'm going to ask them to stand, please. Dr. Heidi Pasek, our Chief Academic Officer. Dr. Camille Consalvo, Associate Dean of Student Affairs. Dr. Daryl Stevens, our Chief Financial Officer. Mel Lehman, Interim Executive Director of Business and Community Development. Mary Kay Bonilla, Executive Director of Human Resources. Lanny Klasner, Interim Executive Director of Communications and Marketing. And probably the most important person on this campus is Lorene Janes, my Executive Assistant. So let's give them a round of applause. Next, I'm going to introduce the state's two-year college TACT SWAMI project administrative team. So this is the Department of Labor grant that the state received last September when we were in Butte at the Regents meeting. And we've put together just a wonderful team to help lead this 13 college consortium. We're breaking ground, plowing new ground, and we're very excited about that. So Matt Springer is our project director. Matt, if you'll please stand. Ed Binkley is the fiscal manager for the grant. Cindy Gahagan is the administrative associate. She's not able to be with us today. Kelsey Coteen is our workforce navigator, and Jerry Pullum, special projects coordinator. She cannot be here either, so let's give them a round of applause. Our student government officers, I'm very pleased to introduce. Tim Reese is our president. Chad Ledbetter, the vice president. Nadine Popa, the treasurer. And Aaron Withrow is the secretary. Let's give them a round of applause. Faculty Senate, we're so very proud of our faculty here. Leonard Bates is Director of Respiratory Therapy, and he is the chair of our Senate. Leonard, if you'll stand. And then Susan Cooper, she is a faculty member in our nutrition program as vice chair. So please give them a round of applause if they're here. Additionally, as part of the mission expansion of the two-year colleges, we have hired our first fine arts humanities faculty member, full-time faculty member, to expand that part of our mission. I'd like to introduce Cynthia Stephens. Last time I saw she was there, she is. She started in January, and since then she's put on Constitution Day events, Martin Luther King Jr. events, Black History Month event, and a concert, which is one of the flyers at your table. We held a violin recital here and performances by Chinook Winds of the Great Falls Symphony. So she's done all that since January. Thank you, Cindy. And I also want to give a big thanks. I'm so pleased that Superintendent Juneau is here. The funding for Big Sky Pathways, I cannot thank the commissioner and his staff enough for that funding. And Charla Merja, I'm not sure if Charla's here or not. Oh, there we go, back here. She's our Big Sky Pathways coordinator. We work so closely with our local school district and our healthcare industry partners, and we're developing 2 pathway certificates, pre-paramedic and pre-medical assistant, to benefit those high school students by providing the opportunity to give high school students to learn more about the healthcare fields. And what a great way for them to explore that while they're still in high school. So thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Superintendent Juneau. As an update, when you were here last May, we had just, we were doing the grand opening of our Bright Beginnings Learning Center, our child care center. And I want to let you know that we are now totally full with 87 young students, and 60 of those are children of our students. So it is doing what we needed for it to do, and I'm just so pleased to tell you that. Dual enrollment at Great Falls College has increased by almost 30% this academic year from last year. FTE increased by 50%. For the first time, more dual enrollment students are taking classes here at the college than online. I'm extremely pleased about that. We've also moved our Veterans Support Center to a much larger space so that we can better meet the needs of our veteran students. And again, we appreciate the grant dollars for that, again, from OCHI. Our Native American Center continues to support our Native American students. They're 7% of our student population, so that's very meaningful for us. In addition to that, I'd like to say that our outreach department they not only hold a kids college every summer, but we're also doing one for talented and gifted students, and it's called Brain Mania, and we'll be doing that this summer in addition. So we really appreciate the partnerships we have with our local school district. And I know we have an important guest coming, so I'm trying to be conscious of that and also watching for that. So at the close of business, like I said, if you have the opportunity, you go up the ramp right out here and turn to the right, you'll come to our Geo Nanslo Lab. This was funded from a TACT Round 2 grant. We're part of a consortium, and this state-of-the-art lab will allow students to manipulate those high-powered microscopes from anywhere in the world. So you can be taking an online science lab now for the first time and actually do actual science experiments from your home. So we're so very proud of that. And so now we're going to roll a video to show you that lab. And again, thank you for being here. We love having you here.
Dean Wolf, was there supposed to be sound with that?
There was supposed to be sound to that, and Ken Wardinsky, our IT director, just said you can go to our website and you can get this. Unfortunately, we didn't ask him to check out the sound before we did this. So anyway, but you saw the words and you could, I think, get the sense of this. But what a fantastic opportunity for us to be one of 3 places in the North American continent to have this equipment. So I encourage you, if you can, to go see it.
Commissioner Christian offered to narrate. I declined his offer.
Oh.
Thank you for being a wonderful host for this meeting, too, Susan. Thank you so much. We are now going to proceed with the agenda to the Commissioner's report, but I did want to put the board on notice that we are going to be having a guest show up shortly, and what we're going to be doing is taking action item C on the Budget Committee's agenda, which is authorization to design new academic classroom and laboratory building for the College of Engineering at MSU, and we'll be handling that in the Committee of the Whole when our guest arrives. So we're going to have a little bit of an interruption when our guest gets here, just to put everybody on notice. But Commissioner Christian, if you would proceed at this point with your report.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We're ready to go. Let's just move to Committee of the Whole.
We will be in Committee of the Whole, and we'll wait for our guest to arrive, and we will turn the microphone over to President Cruzado, who can talk about this project and perhaps have some remarks from our special guest as well. We'll wait for just 30 seconds. Members of the board, we will be in Committee of the Whole for consideration of action item C for the Budget and Audit Oversight Committee. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to President Cruzado. President Cruzado.
Yes. Thank you very much, Regent Tuss, members of the Board of Regents, Commissioner Christian. Montana State University would like to elevate to your consideration an authorization to design the new academic classroom and laboratory building in the College of Engineering. The justification has been provided to you in your materials. As you know very well, Montana, first of all, the College of Engineering is one of the foundational colleges at Montana State University as a land-grant university. It is one of the colleges that throughout its history has provided not only outstanding quality of education, but also a great service to the state of Montana, to the nation, and to the world. As we take a look at the recent history in the College of Engineering, we are very proud by the incredible growth that the college has registered, both in terms of student enrollment growth, but also in terms of the faculty, outstanding faculty members that we have been able to recruit, to retain, and to promote. The College of Engineering, just to give you a sense of idea, has grown just in the last 9 years about 48.5%. And if you just measure student enrollment growth from fall 2012, from fall 2013, that growth was of 12%. At the same time, we have elevated the number of both tenure track and non-tenure track faculty members to make sure that we provide those students with outstanding quality of education. And at the same time, that we continue to attract faculty members that will be very active in research and that will help us continue to expand the frontiers of knowledge in the engineering fields. As we look towards the future and being very concerned about our goals of student retention and degree completion, it is evident to us that the college needs additional space, but also it's not only about a new building. We also need to challenge ourselves to make sure that we provide the quality of education that will meet the needs of the state, not as the way and manner in which we have taught with excellence in the past, but also thinking about how are we going to teach in the future. And one of the opportunities that we would like to explore is to challenge the College of Engineering to continue providing that excellence quality of teaching and service and research, and at the same time to tear down the walls of disciplinary departments and colleges. As we know very well, when you enter the professional life, problems do not come neatly compartmentalized by discipline. And we would like to expose our students early on to the richness of having a hands-on education in which other disciplines also partake and enrich engineering, including but not exclusive other science fields, educational fields, and the many wonderful opportunities that we have for undergraduate research at Montana State University. The need was there for new room, for new spaces, for new pedagogy. What was absolutely historic this week was that one of our very own, our alum, Norm Asbjornsen, a graduate of the class of 1960 from mechanical engineering, came from Winifred, Montana, arrived at Montana State University with his God-given talents and skills, and took the best quality of education that we were able to provide. Armed with those skills and with that education, Mr. Asbjornsen was a very successful individual, a very successful businessman, a very successful engineer. Just right there, the mission of Montana State University would have been fulfilled, in which we took the son of one of the sons of the working families of Montana and gave him the tools and the values and the treasure of education. But the story is incomplete. In reality, Norm Asbjornsen is also exemplary because he turned back to Montana State, never forgetting his roots, and has decided in a long-standing relationship with the university, to give back to the university in the form of scholarships and equipment and research funds. And sitting down with Mr. Asbjornsen, we found that he espouses the same institutional values that we advocate for, but not only that, that he's also a visionary in the field of education. And he communicated to us that he wanted to help us reach our goals of teaching the next generation of outstanding scientists and engineers. So this week, he made an outstanding donation to Montana State University that will benefit the entire state of Montana. You know that he has committed to giving Montana State University $50 million. And what I would like to request the Board of Regents is for you to approve the first phase of planning and design and allow Montana State University to expend up to $5 million for the planning and design of this extraordinary building. And with us this morning, it is my pleasure, and I respectfully ask the Board of Regents to welcome Mr. Norm Asbjornsen.
Mr. Asbjornsen, thank you for being here today, and we certainly welcome the opportunity to hear from you today as well.
Well, appreciate the opportunity to be here and in the context in which we're here. As was mentioned earlier here, I've been a part of the university quite a bit of the time for the past few years, and discussions about how to improve the engineering education. And I will tell you that I have not found my engineering education to be at all lacking in competition with students or people from all other universities. I was always able to stand my own with my engineering knowledge. I did find, however, that I was a little short in being able to relate to other disciplines and in doing so. And so part of the conversation which has been held was how to further an engineering education. And it's not necessary to talk about making somebody an expert in other fields. That's not what the discussion has been about. It's been about opening the door far enough so one realizes what the opportunities are from working with other people in other disciplines. And as we've progressed in our conversations about how that might happen over many years, it finally came down to the fact that there were two problems, as I understood them. Number one, the growth of the College of Engineering has necessitated needing more educational space. And along with it was the need to come up with a decidedly different concept in what some of that space is in order to allow collaborative education to go forth with other disciplines involved in the process. And that is what has been endeavored to be put into the scope of this building as I have seen it. And having traveled around at other times, including internationally, I have seen in at least one country, Korea, a educational building with a similar kind of an outlook on it. And I think it's absolutely a must to take Montana State University to the next level of an engineering education and to make it distinctly better than most of its competition. And I sincerely hope that you will approve the engineering to go forth, and I sincerely hope that you value the effort that has been put in by the College of Engineering to get the ideas and the concepts the way they need to be, in my opinion, to achieve the goal they have set forth. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asbjornson. Comments from the board? Comments from the board? Regent Robinson.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, again, I got a chance to talk with you a little bit last night, and I think you understand the impact that this will have, and we're not just talking about this decision this morning, but the impact of this type of facility within our university system, and we want to thank you for that. Regarding the item on the agenda, I see in looking at this that it is stated in here, it's the desire to construct this facility to be LEED certified. And I think that's very important with a facility of this type. The impact that we want to have with our students on the campus is that we should be looking not just this facility, but other facilities as well, the newer facilities, looking at higher performing facilities like this. And that's what the LEED certification does. So I just want to emphasize that if that can be really outlined well in that proposal that goes out for architectural design, because this is one portion of the lifespan of the building. It's great to have the funds in order to build an exceptional building like this. It's another thing to operate it for the next 30 or 40 years. And so I think it's important as we do these type of facilities that we keep that in mind, and especially with this, so that our operational costs are kept to a minimum and certainly should be reflected in a building of this type. So I'm glad that that's part of this, and I hope that we broaden that a bit so we define it when it goes out to bid to make sure that we have the right people working on this for our students. So I'm very much in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Robinson. Further comments from the board? Regent Regala.
Mr. Asbjornson, we didn't have the privilege to meet last night, but I know from the student perspective, students in the College of Engineering at Montana State are pretty dang excited. And I received an email that had paraphrased one of your quotes. I'd just like to share this because I think it speaks to Mr. Asbjornson as a person and the importance of this gift. He says, "I think it's an absolute must for everyone to give back to what made them successful. Mr. Asbjornson, he's had a lot of help from MSU and from his hometown of Winifred. He says he can't repay those who helped him, for they are gone, but he can give to the next generation, and he thinks that everyone should balance the books at some point and thank those people, those institutions who helped them, and give to the next generation, and it's a responsibility we all have. And I think that's one of the best motivations for being invested in your institution, and thank you for the gift. And so if there's no further comments, I'd like to move to approve.
There's a motion from Regent Regala. Are there further comments from members of the board? Further comments from, please.
Thank you, Chairman Tush. As a faculty member at Montana State University Bozeman and a College of Engineering professor, I probably don't need to tell you that the excitement level has hit the ceiling at MSU. But what you may not realize is that your vision of this interactive, collaborative, multidisciplinary building and really system that I think that you've described as your vision is resonating across campus. I mean, the excitement level is high in many areas across campus, and I think as faculty and as students, we're quite excited about moving in that direction. So I just want to express my gratitude as well. Thank you.
Commissioner Christian.
Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bjornson, I would just like to say, you know, that this project's an exciting one. There are many needs around the system, and we sort of wrestle with that balance all the time. Certainly there's a demonstrated need for this moving forward, but without you sitting here today, this would be a very difficult project to move forward. And I just want to make sure that we extend our gratitude as a system and as a state and as future generations of Montanans and Montana students to you for the inspiration of this gift and truly for the gift itself. It will move this project forward, something that Montana State University has only sort of dreamed of up to this point, and you're helping bring those dreams to this table today and to reality in the future, and that is quite a gift to Montana and Montana students. We very much thank you. I've gotten to visit with you some in the last few days, and I just have to say it's a remarkable inspiration how much you talk about the value of education. We sort of talk about that anecdotally, but you really bring it home and you really tie that to success. In your talks on Monday, you're very candid about the fact that you didn't do this all on your own and that it was through education and those around you that you were able to get to a spot where you have the ability to help us with this project, and that's remarkable. And we thank you for that, and we thank you for your words and encouragement of what it means to value education, value yourself, and ultimately value giving back to your community and to your states. Thank you on behalf of the system. We appreciate it.
Regent Krause.
Thank you. It was my privilege to speak the other day, so I don't need to reiterate what I said then. Thank you for your gift, and thank you for the example you're setting. Regarding this as a policy discussion a little bit in the motion, just to say that it is a good strategy to bet on the fastest horses, to put money on the most successful programs, and this is a program that is stellar in the university system, the engineering program, and And thank you. We've doubled down now on engineering at the Montana State University, and having seen it grow by, 50%, I think, over the last few years, I think we can, the quality, the quantity, the experience, everything embodied in what you just said, adding to it, putting the two together, putting the different disciplines together, that is going to make a premier engineering program in the United States, and you've really set us on that track, and I don't see, I don't have any caveats about joining you and Dr. Cruzado in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Kraus. The motion on the table by Regent Regala is the authorization to design new academic classroom and laboratory building for the College of Engineering at Montana State University. Are there any further comments? Any further comments?
I just needed to add as a personal anecdote. A Monday before the press release, I had already confirmed that I was going to be in Chief Joseph Middle School. And the reason why I was there, because we were celebrating Dr. Seuss' birthday. And they asked a number of community partners if we could go and read out loud to the class. And of course, they invited me to read Cat in the Hat. What else? But I had an opportunity in my introductory comments to share with the eighth graders what I was about to do and the announcement that I was about to make. And I just need to tell Norm that you have inspired all of us, all our communities around Montana. But what I saw in the eyes of those eighth graders was the promise of the future, that they too could be engineers, that they too could dream big. So I just needed to say that this gift truly inspires all of us and generations of us in the future. And it is true, after all, that what they told me when I was growing up in Puerto Rico, and that is, engineers solve problems. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you, President Cruzado. Regent Albrecht.
Chair Tuss, members of the board, it was such a delight to spend time with you yesterday, Mr. Asbjornson, and I just didn't want to miss the opportunity to thank you, but also knowing that when we receive contributions at our universities, that sometimes those are situations where the money is exchanged, but this is more of an investment very clearly from you in your desire to be here today to talk to us about your strong passion about ensuring that this happens and that this moves forward. And I want to thank you for that. Because you didn't need to do that. You could have simply said, I want to make this contribution and be on your way. But you have vision and you have such an insight that is remarkable and valuable, and I thank you for that. I also thank you for sharing your failures last night and how you had to stretch. And I think that's very important for everyone to see, that it requires taking those risks. And I believe that this transformative gift will allow our students to look at those risks and to explore how they can really be a part of transforming not just our Montana, but their world, our global experience, and how they can truly make a difference. And I thank you for that. I thank you for all that you've done. It's an absolute delight, and I am absolutely in favor of the motion from Regent Regala.
Seeing no further comments, we will now vote on the motion by Regent Regala. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. thank you once again, Mr. Asbjornson, for your generosity and for this investment in Montana. We are now going to proceed with the rest of our agenda. You certainly can join us in that endeavor. Not sure that you'd want to, but you can. And I believe at this point I'm going to turn the agenda over to Commissioner Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, so we, you might notice, have a little bit of extra time allotted to the Commissioner's report this morning. We get awful busy on occasion with the business of the meetings and getting through the work that we have to do. But I want you all to know, as we tackle this topic today, as we will at future meetings, it's important that we invest as a system some time in revisiting old projects and exploring new ones and making sure that we are relevant in our discussions. As you all know, when the governor finishes his next 2 appointments, we will have 4 new members inside of a year. And that is remarkable, and I think it's encouraging, and it will bring lots of life and energy to this board, and that's an exciting time for the MUS. I want to make sure that we allow some time at each meeting. We sort of work our way back through what has been sort of the mainstay of the Montana University system, and we're going to start today with our strategic plan. Just to revisit that, it's a document we created, I believe, in 2006. And it's been very much a guiding principle for us as we move forward. And I just want to start there, and we will, over the course of the next year, sort of branch out from that discussion further in this section of the meeting. So I have asked Tyler Trevor, who is one of the main architects of this document back when it was approved, and certainly works every year to make sure that it stays as relevant and pertinent as we possibly can, to walk us through a bit of an overview, and we'll move from there. Mr. Trevor.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, good morning. I basically have a twofold objective today, and that is to remind everyone of the components of the strategic plan, the strategic initiatives within the plan, some of the progress metrics, and number 2, to do that as painlessly as possible. And in order to get through that, I've given you all a hard copy of the document. You can follow through page by page. Each page has its basic own concept. On the web, though, as well, we have a page dedicated to that. It's on the mus.edu website. And what I'm going to do is basically just click through page by page, try to spend less than a minute on each page. But I really want to encourage you to stop me at any point in time and ask questions and make it more of a dynamic presentation rather than me just talking at you throughout this. With that said, start with the introduction to the plan. And that's not going to work good. Okay, the strategic plan, as the commissioner indicated, was approved by the Board of Regents in 2006. Its origin comes from 2 primary sources. First, a statewide initiative called Shared Leadership. It was a group of business leaders, the legislature, the Board of Regents, the governor's office, coming together to set the course for higher education starting in about 2003. Combined with that, shared policy goals approved by the legislature, interim committee, education and local government, in conjunction with the regions, combined to create the 3 primary goal areas within the plan. First, access and affordability. Second, economic and workforce development. And third, efficiency and effectiveness. So the plan itself is grouped into 3 big chunks. Within each chunk, we have individual components. Those are the pages that I'll click through. Before I do that, I want to quickly click on guiding principles. This was added to the plan in 2009 or 2010 by the Regents based upon a working committee. It was called the Regents Work Group for Reform and Reinvention, led largely by Regent Buchanan, to take a look at the strategic plan itself and add areas that needed to be updated. And one of the areas that was identified is that we didn't really set a real explicit course in terms of when was the plan evaluated, who would be involved, what was the purpose, its accountability attributes, the flexible nature of the plan, how the plan should be connected to campus strategic plans, the state and national-wide focus that the plan needs. It's a very high-level overview of that on this page itself, but it starts to explain a little bit about that work group, the planning process, and which led to a success agenda, which is kind of more of an operational component added on to the plan at the very end that was recommended by and adopted by the Regents in 2010 that we've come back to quite often. We haven't talked about it probably for a year with this board, but I remember when the commissioner took office, that's the first thing we went to check out, are we on course with that? So we've stuck pretty close by that. One thing I want to mention about the plan, I talked about how the Education and Local Government Committee, each interim, takes a look at its shared policy goals, and they say, well, how is the Regents and our connection with the Regents' shared policy goals measured and reported annually? And I have the opportunity to do this. I hold up the plan. I said, this is the shared policy goal document with the legislature. It's not only your strategic plan, but the legislature adopts this, they sign off on it, and we use it at the beginning of each legislative session. This has been done pretty much since the beginning of the plan. So it has a dual purpose here, and it has really been an advantageous approach to us to working with the legislature. So with that said, I'll get into the heart of the plan, which are about 15 different components. First, underneath the access and affordability portion of the plan, college participation. This will kind of set the tone for each area. We have a goal statement within access and affordability, and that's to prepare students for success throughout life, through higher education, very broad. Within those broad statements, we neck them down into objectives. This objective is to improve post-secondary participation rates, particularly for Montana residents going to MUS institutions. So first off, the question which is largely asked of me, probably more than any other question I have on my job, is what % of our high school students go on to college annually? And what does it look like over time, and how do we compare to other states and the nation? And the answer to that is in this first chart. And you can see that Montana, and you also see that we compare ourselves to the western states, and I'll do that throughout this document. As a college continuation rate as of fall 2012, that's all students coming out of Montana high schools going on to college in the fall immediately following high school graduation anywhere in the nation. We're at 60%. That compares to the regional average, which is we're slightly above it, and at the same time, we're slightly below the national average. That's been a trend, I would say, for about the last 10 years. And I'd hit on another point, which is what %, how would we slice up that 60% in terms of what portion come to the Montana university system, what portion go to private and tribal colleges in Montana, and what portion go out of state? And that's that chart down here at the bottom. And I know it's very difficult to see, but now in 2012, we're at an all-time high of the % of high school students that go on to college and choose the Montana university system. 41% of high school grads will enter into the Montana university system immediately following high school graduation. 6% go on to either private or tribal. I grouped those into one category. That would be Carroll College, the University of Great Falls, Rocky, and the tribal colleges. And then we're at 13% go out of state, which has shrunk over time. And as what you can extrapolate from that is we have a higher % choosing to stay in state. Some of this might have to do with economic times and pricing, and as the university system has become more affordable. So this kind of sets the tone for, I spent more time on this page than I will on others, but over here on the left-hand side, we try to put out there for you the system initiatives that are oriented towards this particular goal or objective. Now, we have efforts that go on throughout the university system that are so numerous, we couldn't even put them in a document. But again, this is the systems strategic plan. So in an effort to connect the goals, the objectives, the metrics, we always want to make sure we're pointing back to what initiatives are produced from these, and how are those initiatives affecting our metrics. And over here, we put two of our larger initiatives, College Now and our Gear Up grant that's run out of the system office in conjunction with OPI.
Tyler?
Yep.
Two things I would mention. 60%, which is a good number for us. There's a lot of room there. And that's of students that graduate from high school. As the superintendent sits here today, you all know that she's made tremendous strides in sort of a mainstay is graduation matters. And as we bring more high school students through the process and graduate more, the students are there. One of the questions I get more often than not is, what are you going to do about the declining demographics in the state and enrollment, and where's all that going to end up? And I've said for years as a board member and now in this role, the students are there. If I look at it from a business perspective, there's a lot of room. The students are there that we need to be successful. We just have to do what we need to do, what we're encouraged to do, and what is the right thing to do on so many levels is to get those students engaged in education, whatever level that may be, from a certificate to postdoc. That's what we can offer the state of Montana. And if we engage that population, we're not in a crisis whatsoever about finding the students that we need to make our system successful. They're right there in front of us. We just need to work hard, and we need to work with K-12, and we need to work with ourselves to make sure that we're attracting those students and we're getting them to a spot within our system that they can succeed.
Okay, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit as we go through each one of these pages, but don't hesitate to stop me on any one topic that you might want to discuss. Retention and completion, wow, that's at the heart of what we do. It's at the heart of the Complete College Montana project. The metrics on here are graduation rates and retention rates. They track first-time, full-time students. You'll hear me say that 100 times. It's obviously not the majority even of all of the students in the system, but it's pretty much the framework of what the federal government tells us to measure, and we can compare it to other states. That's why these metrics are out there. I could say about both retention rates and graduation rates, we are slightly behind the Western average. We've been working on catching it. It moves slowly, but we've been making progress. You bet.
Mr. Chair, Board of Regents, I know last time I attended, I think there was a discussion about American Indian retention and graduation from the Montana University system, and we didn't get fully into it because I think the American Indian Achievement person at OCHI had laryngitis or something. But I'm wondering if this board's going to address that again and take a look at those numbers, because I think there is some work to do in that area.
Mr. Chair, if I might take a stab at that to begin with. Our set of metrics for Complete College Montana are in the process of being developed. We have them measured for all students right now, and it's my job now to go back and disaggregate those. One of the primary categories is race and ethnicity. And so our completion agenda metrics will always be first system-wide, campus-wide, and then disaggregated by those individual groups. But I know that individual regions might have some other, and as well as the commissioner, some detail to add to that.
Robinson.
Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Juneau, thank you for the question, and I think we saw at our meeting in Bozeman, we did start to discuss that, and we started to get some preliminary data about it, that we can have those discussions. I can say that for the planning meeting that we had this last month in Helena with the board and with the administrators, we had a lot of discussion about that. And so there's a commitment from the university system, from the board, from the discussions that I've had with board members, that this is a priority. And so working with the commissioner's office and the commissioner's staff, that's something that we will be addressing specifically. And as well as acknowledging what work we have done on each of the campuses too. Identifying those resources to help with that issue, but more importantly, developing a strategy and implementing that strategy. So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay, moving on to the next one, financial aid. Financial aid and affordability, probably two topics that every board, since I've been employed since 2006, has been paid a lot of attention to. One of our metrics is state-funded need-based aid, not federally funded, but funds coming from our state to support low-income students. And how does that change over time, and how does it look on a national and regional basis in comparison? We basically get $4.5 million per year now from the state of Montana for need-based aid. Back in '03, it was 3.6. It's been an initiative of the board to increase this for quite some time. When we compare regionally, we see that we are in a per student type funding about half as much as what is found throughout the region. If you look at this on a national basis, you could quadruple what we have and we would hit the average. So some states, state funded, put more money, I should say a lot of states put more money into state funded need-based aid than we do in Montana. It's not to say, though, if you scroll down, that we don't have financial aid for students overall. We have quite a good package of financial aid for entering first-time, now we're going to look at first-time full-time Montana residents. We select out that group because they all pay the same amount, and so we can kind of measure the affordability based upon the average amount of financial aid that those students are receiving. And that's that chart down here below, and you'll see we're at an all-time high for the average student who comes in. There's 4,000 of them, 4,300 of them that come in. The average that all those students get in terms of grants, scholarships, waivers, work study is $4,300 a year. I think it's pretty good. And there's a whole set of dynamics that go on with these affordability financial aid type metrics, and I hope to do a presentation for you in more detail at the May meeting, and it'll connect back to these charts that you're seeing here on financial aid, as well as those found here on affordability. And this is the average amount for that same group of students, first-time, full-time resident Montanans that come in, and what is their average loan debt that they accumulate in the first year of those who borrowed. It's $5,500, $5,700. And what percent have been borrowing over time? It's been about 58%. We take a second here to in the middle chart to recognize that affordability in the Montana university system, as we may have low tuition, you have to pay attention to the median income of in the state of Montana, which is always next to last, if not last in the nation. And so we do a ratio there to see how we're doing over time. We've been making progress in that component. And as well, going back to pre-2006 and the accountability measures and the interest of the regents and the legislature was to make sure we paid attention to the level of state support that was allocated to the university system in order to ensure that we're able to keep that tuition down and that we have a comparable amount of taxes going to higher education as other states, and that's what this chart down here reflects. So you really see kind of the holistic view of these metrics. I would point out that one of our recent initiatives that we've added in as of some of the hard questions that Regents were asking us at the system office, what are you doing to ensure that students don't accumulate too much student debt? We secured a grant, and we now have all campuses in the university system working together on financial literacy. That's a topic that you'll probably want to ask Ron Muffick, our Director of Student Services and Affairs, later on today when he talks about, or tomorrow when he talks about default rates. K-20 collaboration. I got to slow down on this one, or Superintendent Juneau's gonna knock me off the podium here. That's a joke, and actually I have to apologize to Senate, to the superintendent. This is her second time sitting through this wonderful presentation in less than 2 weeks. So, yeah, okay, thank you. K-20 collaboration. How many different ways could we measure this? This has some history in the metrics and also some dynamics that go into every other metric. For instance, what percent of our entering students are from low income or have an ethnic minority background? We take a look at that and we measure that percent over time. The top performing students, what percent come in that have an ACT in the top quartile? been very consistent, about 1/3 of those students. And then down here at the bottom, something that's more connected to our recent initiatives, how many students have the opportunity to participate in either AP classes or dual enrollment classes? We're actively tracking that. You know we're actively working on that, and Dr. Seck will talk more about that, I'm sure, during his time here at the meeting. My mouse is getting jumpy on me. Okay, two-year education. I almost don't have to talk about that because Dr. Seck is here, but I should mention that we do have this as a primary component of the plan. We take a look at enrollment right off the bat and say, let's increase it. Let's make sure we get more students entering into this affordable area called two-year education. And in particular, let's get non-traditional students. We saw dual enrollment on the other side, non-traditional students on this side. Those are two big areas that two-year education plays a role in our university system. I will point out one of the primary statistics that we've held on to, and we've made a point of why do this in Montana. Why should we increase two-year education? And the reason why is when we take a look at the distribution of where students attend, either four-year or two-year, and we compare Montana to other states, we are way on the lopsided end of very few students in percentage-wise in two-year education. If you went back 15 years ago, it would have been about 17%, 18%. We're up to 29% now that are enrolled undergraduates in two-year education. We made great strides. But if you take a look at the regional average is at 48%. And so we still don't look like your typical even Western state, but some states have, and I think nationally, we would find out that more students are enrolled in two-year education than four-year education. So that was the heart of the argument as to why we should be pursuing this in Montana. Distance learning, this has been a giant topic for us over time. We've received legislative funding to impact that chart you see right there. We've gone from 3,600 students enrolled in at least one distance learning course to now almost 10,000 students enrolled in distance learning. It's 20% of the population. We still aren't up to the national average. What they say is closer to 30% now, but we're working on that, and we're chasing it, and we have a system-wide group that is really a cohesive group that works together on finding efficiencies related to distance learning. That gets us out of the access and affordability area. Actually, I jumped all the way out of the plan. Now quickly into workforce and economic development. Not to say that this is less important, but I will move fairly quickly through this. Workforce development, let's focus on degrees and certificates in high demand areas. We pull out healthcare in this area. At one point in time, we had construction in here as well. It kind of moved in and out. We've added things to the plan over time, either in the interim in conjunction with ELG or board-specific agenda items such as student loan debt. This is an area that we've transformed a bit as we've connected our data to the Department of Labor and now can track our graduates into the Montana workforce. We have excellent statistics on what % of Montana or MUS graduates find employment in Montana 1 year following their graduation. So if you take a look at resident students who graduate from the Montana University system, we know now that 78% will be employed in Montana following graduation. They could be employed at McDonald's. I'll admit that right off the bat. But what this indicates is they're staying. The idea that when you graduate from the Montana University system and you have to take off and go to another state to find employment, that's a myth from the 90s. It happened in the 90s. I was one of the people that did it, and I think we have a lot of people around that might have done it. But it's changing now. And we know that from our in-migration statistics as well. We are a net importer, not a net exporter of graduates. So you can take a look at this by education level. Our two-year campuses, these obviously, they're connected to people in their community that already live here. Maybe they're already working, but they also are very driven at getting those students into the workforce. And then you can see the rates for each level. This is a wealth of statistics here that's produced out of that. And we use that when we're applying for grants, when we're talking with the legislature about specific areas, and the campuses also have that same data.
Members of the board, I would just like you to know that there are cut sheets or sheets available on sort of all these topics that are at your guys' disposal. I think these are important messages, especially this last one. I mean, how many times have you heard, we invest all this money and everybody graduates and then they leave the state? And that's not happening. We're investing all this money, people stay in the state, we're creating jobs, we're filling jobs. That's exciting news. We spent a lot of time at the last session trying to get that message out. But that needs to be something that happens across our campuses. And so, you know, really even anyone around the campuses within the system. This data is readily available. Tyler is incredible at getting it out and getting it to whoever needs it. These are messages that are not only important to our strategic plan and where we're headed, but in a lot of these areas, I feel like we're living up to our strategic plan. This is something that we're achieving day to day, and we need to make sure that that message is a little louder within our communities.
The next area, research and development, we actually reviewed this at the last, oh, sorry.
That's all right. I was just going to point out in that last slide, 84% of people who achieve an associate's degree, two-year degree, stay in the state of Montana, 84%. And that's another reason we are concentrating on two-year colleges.
And we won't get too far into the data, but and it even gets better because a lot of the areas that we really need people, when you go to healthcare, it's 88% stay in the state. I mean, areas that we need graduates to stay and work in our state, we're doing very well at. We just need to take the time and make the vehicle to show some of the great examples of what we're getting accomplished.
Yeah.
Thank you, Regent Cross.
We talked about research and development at the last board meeting. This is an annual report we provide to the regions. We use this page of the strategic plan as the vehicle to communicate the 30,000-foot message to you. You're going to be hearing more about research and research plans as we move forward. Graduate education, I can't click on this one without thinking about President Engstrom. The plan used to not have this page back in, I think, when President Engstrom was Provost Engstrom, and pointed out that it was a glaring defect, and we promptly worked on it with a group of system and campus folks, and we added this. The Educational Local Government Committee adopted it as well as a shared policy goal, and now we take a look at the effort to increase enrollment in graduate education, as well as some statistics on STEM-related production and enrollment within graduate education. So you have your full package there, from two-year education and workforce to research and graduate education as those high-level goals in the workforce and economic development area of the plan. The final area, efficiency and effectiveness, I'll touch on real briefly here. Information technology. We've talked about the topics of integrated information systems quite a lot, network connectivity, and data warehousing. Those are our three big chunks that we like to, or I do, from the system level. Admittedly, our expertise is at the campus level with this. We rely upon those experts to drive these initiatives, but it is at the Regents level that we focus on other areas, but those three have been predominant. Efficiency, this has been a widely talked about topic, and probably most measured is how many dollars do we have per student? How many dollars do we have in revenue per student? How many dollars do we expend per student? How does that compare to other states? There is as simple as that statement sounds, there's a variety of ways of measuring this. You'll see statistics that might vary by $2,000 per student, just based upon the definition of how it's measured and the data set that you use. In order to compare ourselves to other states, we have to stick with revenue per student. But as we all know, our revenue per student that comes from state appropriations and tuition has to equal our expenditures per student. So this is basically expenditures per student as well. And what we're looking at here is net tuition instead of gross tuition. So this number is a little bit lower than what you would normally see in your operating budgets when you approve those in September. With that said, it's measured the same for all the states. We are second to the last in the West. We are second to the last in the nation. We have a low amount of appropriations and tuition to spend per student. That's fact. It has been a fact since I've worked here, and I think it'll probably continue to be a fact for quite some time. If you take a look at Wyoming and Alaska, they almost have twice as much as we do. Okay, the next chart, where do we spend our dollars? And do we spend in instruction versus student support versus academic support? And what's the goal of the regions? Well, the goal has traditionally been, let's make sure that we have 70% spent in instruction, academic support, and student services. We've measured this longitudinally, going back to 1985, I'd point out. And you can see there's been a lot of changes. One of the areas that increased here is waivers. One of the areas that's decreased since 85 is instruction. We're at 48%. There are a huge number of dynamics that go into this: student to faculty ratios, the percent of faculty that are full-time employed on your campus. These are those more of the detail that we get into during the operating budget. This is just basically our high-level measure that we have in the plan. Transferability. We added this in 2007 at the urging of our interim committee, and we did so willingly, and we received a $1.5 million appropriation to Common Course number. And the statement down here that really sums it all up is, as of June 2012, more than 10,000 courses in over 60 disciplines have gone through the Common Course numbering process. That represents 100% of our undergraduate courses. There's a really difficult time trying to measure what effect that has. Should more students be transferring? Should less students be transferring? Should credits transfer easier? Absolutely. What we have here are a measure of new transfer students throughout the system. We haven't seen a spike in that number since Common Course numbering. I would still argue that we have a long way to go in this process. It's just been adopted, and some of the courses only have been there for a year or two that have been common numbered, some since 2009. Okay, almost done. Budget allocation. I usually just used to blow right past this one because it says, take a look at your budget allocation process, how you distribute the lump to campuses, and make sure that we're reviewing it on a biennial basis. We do that. But what was new now, I added in this left-hand column, performance-based funding. Inside of this, going all the way back to 2005 and 6, there's a mention of performance-based funding and encouraging the Regents to allocate some funds based upon performance outcomes. And that's what we're doing, and you'll hear more from me later on this afternoon on that topic. And finally, I won't talk about it, but I encourage you to read it. The success agenda, these were the operational kind of strategies that we put together as a result of this workforce and work group on reform and reinvention. I would mention that the folks that were on there were 3 regions, and you see citizen advisors that ranged from legislators to other members that are connected to business, industry, and other areas throughout Montana. With that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my report on the strategic plan.
Mr. Chair, hopefully this is informative. I would say that, you know, we get asked, well, why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? I think that we can demonstrate that what we're doing ties back to the strategic plan. We try to stay focused on those 3 areas. Sometimes that leads us in other directions, but it is, as Regent Teal would say, not a document that sits on the shelf. It's a document that we use, that we update, and that we try to follow. And I think if we incorporate it into sort of or we continue to use it as a working document, it will serve us well as it has for nearly the last 10 years. The next thing that we're moving to is Dr. Seck will give us a little update on workforce development. Any questions on the strategic plan before?
Regent Regala.
Clay, and this is just a question on recollection. So on the introduction, the first page, right underneath the goal section, there's a paragraph regarding maintaining the high quality of our institutions and the education provided to our students is not listed as an explicit goal because it's the most important. Is that new verbiage from this year?
It's not new verbiage. And we've, as sometimes when we did listening sessions in the past, we would talk a lot about the strategic plan and where those tied in. And I don't think we've ever had a conversation that we didn't start by saying, you know, we have the 3 main sort of pillars of the strategic plan. But clearly, the overarching goal has been, will be, and will continue to be quality. I mean, we really are nothing. And you can argue access to what if it's not a quality education that's desirable, valuable? I mean, all of those things that lie underneath it really have no value to us left if we don't maintain the quality. And I, you know, that's a great question. We have a lot of initiatives. We have a lot of things that we're trying to accomplish as we try to move forward and as we try to see retention and completion and all the things that we're trying to drive within the system. You know, they sort of all tug at each other. And yet, I think this board has had a tremendous perspective on that, and I think it will maintain one that quality is what matters, and that we achieve these things in light of quality. It's been the overarching principle of that document since it was drafted. It's never changed. That is a great question, and it really is the overriding value there, and we need to make sure that that stays in the forefront. And certainly from my office, there's a pledge to do that, and I think this board has demonstrated great leadership in that over the years since the document was created to say, we are doing these things, quality matters. That's obviously a balancing point, but one that we will stay focused on.
Regent Krause.
Thanks. Yeah, I wasn't going to talk to your question, but I think I will. But first, I wanted to thank some of the people that have gone before us and established this back in 2006 that have iterated it. Commissioner Christian, Todd Buchanan come to mind right away, and I think the people that have bought off on it over the years that are here and not here, the Lieutenant Governor I think of, and also the staff of OCHI. I think listening to we take for granted having Tyler Trevor get up there and I'm not, it's not just because I share that leaving the state after you graduate with you and going to the same place, but it's, I really appreciate you standing up and help us quantify this and talk about what we're doing. I don't take that for granted, so thank you very much. All of the staff, there's 3 of them back there. Smile guys, so thank you very much. And, in our planning, we heard about our efforts with American Indians, and that was very helpful too, and I'm not forgetting that as well. I also want to speak to quality a little bit, and it's you can get way down that Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance idea when you're talking about quality. What I would say is our strategic plan does address quality, and many of the components of the strategic plan address quality. It's hard to say, is quantity part of quality? It could be, I think, if you look at our goals, I think they do address quality, the quality of what we do, okay? Does it address the quality of a particular class or discipline or something like that? Perhaps it does, but overall, things like Common Course numbering and the efforts that went into that, or things like focus on, our underserved populations, those things really are part of the quality of what we provide the taxpayers and the citizens of Montana. So it's easy to get sort of wrapped around the axle of, well, is that class worse or better? But when you look at it at a very high level, I think the components of the strategic plan do address quality.
Thank you, Regent. Regent Albrecht.
Chair Tuss, members of the board. Deputy Commissioner Trevor, question for you. Sorry, Dr. Seck. When you speak of workforce development, as we know, the importance of engaging our students in private-public partnerships, internships, practicums, meaningful application, research, really does move the dial for future employment. I'm curious if we have metrics in place that help us to really understand what we are doing at our colleges and universities to help to ensure that those businesses know our students and look to our programs for quality employees.
Mr. Chair, Regent Albrecht, great question. And this is what I say, is that we have indicators of that in our plan, but that's really the only level we can get to at the system level. But I bet if you ask President Cruzado or President Ingstrom if they have internships and getting students engaged in the community or in businesses and within their own strategic plans, which link back to that, that's the level where you're going to find internships and that really value of do businesses value our graduates? Yet you have to do that at the program level. It has to get down into that. Otherwise, what you can use are indicators like we do, like what % stay in Montana, what % stay in Montana by degree level. We can pick out healthcare as an area and take a look at where those graduates go. But as a system level of information, we can't get, we could, but it would be almost impossible to handle and report the number of internships that occurred in a semester at U of M in a particular program. But those campuses have that, and that's what the beauty of this plan is. Those plans feed back up into ours.
Yeah.
Regent Albrecht and members of the board, if I could just add a quick detail to illustrate that. Both MSU Bozeman and Missoula have a distinctive Carnegie classification that relates to this topic. In addition to sort of the normal Carnegie classification of doctoral institution and so on, we have both applied for and received special designation as Carnegie institutions in community engagement and the civic engagement of our students. And internships form one of the core pieces of that, the mechanism of that engagement. So those are very distinctive recognitions on the part of both of these institutions anyhow.
Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy Commissioner Trevor, I want to thank you for presenting this again to us. I love the data. I do, because it really answers or starts to answer a lot of questions for us. And there's a couple things that stand out to me on this. I mean, we talked about one of them, about how many of our graduates are actually staying here in Montana and finding employment in Montana. And certainly it's great to be able to go out and do that elsewhere as well. But I'm really in favor of, when we can, that our economy can support those graduates coming out of our system. And it's good to see that that's happening on a 2- and 4-year level. What's also stands out to me is, again, that we're second and last with state funding. And that's been consistent. And I think we have now before us, and we're right in the middle of a great opportunity for that, because we have also worked successfully through the Commissioner's Office and our legislators to show that we truly are accountable to the taxpayers of Montana, and that through performance funding, that there's some great opportunities for us to show just how we can further increase the performance that we have. It's also concerning to me on the same page that we're seeing that as far as where our expenditures are going, is that it's dropping in instruction. That's a concern, and we've talked about that in the past too, about being able to find those individuals out there and attract them to come and teach and retain those that we have now. So I hope as we move forward, Mr. Commissioner, is that we really do, once we get back on the track of preparing for that next legislative session, is that we bring that to them, to our legislators, to communicate to them what we're doing and how much more we can do, because I think it's not okay to be, second to the last when it comes to that. And I think we see some opportunities when we show that we're utilizing the dollars wisely, that how much more we can do with the funding. So I really thank you for presenting this information. And it is a document that we go back to again and again. So thank you.
If there's one agenda item that gets us consistently behind schedule, it's this conversation, and that's not a negative. It's I think the seriousness that this board takes this strategic plan, the quality of the strategic plan, and the wonderful data that's in it. So thank you for a great presentation. Deputy Commissioner Sack, I believe that you're up to bat.
Thank you, Chairman Tuss, members of the board, Commissioner. We had some great news back in September when the U.S. Department of Labor announced that the state of Montana would receive a $25 million grant from the Department of Labor to focus on energy and advanced manufacturing workforce development. We then dealt with the government shutting down for a good chunk of October, which slowed things down a little bit. But I'm here to report today that things are happening with this grant, and you're going to see a lot of activity coming forward very quickly. I'd like to begin by recognizing the tremendous work of Dean Wolf, who is the dean of course, Great Falls College, MSU, but the lead college for the consortium of 13 colleges. She's done a great job. and also Matt Springer, who became the project director of the grant. Matt, stand up. Matt was the grant writer at Flathead Valley Community College who actually wrote the grant, applied for and was hired to be the project director of this grant. He's a very bright young man and is going to do a great job. The team here at Great Falls College has been fantastic, and then each of the CEOs, deans, and all of their staff at the 13 colleges have been great to work with on this, including 2 tribal colleges. Under the guidance of the U.S. Department of Labor, this grant really is focused on creating access through stackable credential programs to offer more frequent opportunities for people to move into jobs than our traditional Associate of Arts or Certificate of Applied Science programs provide. The model achieves this by breaking the traditional curriculum down into a series of stacked certificates or tiers, and the goal is the completion of each tier, resulting in an industry-recognized credential in addition to an educational award. And after completion of that credential, the students can either go to work or continue on towards the next credential. The intent of the stacked certificate model is to increase labor market payoffs for these students by a couple of ways. Number one, reducing the amount of time the students need to spend in training to get the proper preparation, and 2, providing documentation of that preparation for entry into work. We are presently working on Tier 1 certificates for this grant, which include welding, diesel, machining, industrial electronics, energy technology, and entrepreneurship. Each of these certificates will be presented to this board in May for approval. The subsequent tiers are being developed and will be presented to the board for approval in time for the students to enroll in them. For each of these occupational areas, there's a lead college charged with developing the tiered certificate programs and determining the content delivery and necessary fees. Other colleges, the partner colleges, will emulate the terminal learning outcomes and integrate the same industry-recognized credentials as the lead college. The majority of the programs will begin this fall. That means we will begin enrolling students in these programs this fall. We have a few non-credit programs already underway, or under development. Bitterroot College and City College are working on new commercial driver's license CDL programs, and City College is working on a non-credit oil and gas training program that does integrate industry-recognized credentials. I can provide detail about what each of the colleges are doing if you're interested during the Q&A section. The course sharing model of this grant is a key strength, and it's one that I want to highlight because it provides the ability to reach out to student populations across the state and provide them with opportunities for accelerated learning. Each of these stacked credentials that we've been talking about use a common delivery system to provide interactive, technology-enhanced, and online curriculum. This approach will create significant efficiencies wherein a single faculty facilitator can deliver online training across the state, and then the lab portion or the industry portion can be done on site. The team has been working to develop a systemic approach that requires a comprehensive plan to establish financial logistical framework for inter-campus online sharing. We have been working, in fact, we spent a good chunk of yesterday talking about this with the 2-year folks. Other strategies that we're working on and hope to have approved soon from the Department of Labor include Emporium-style developmental education reform, our workforce navigators, which we want to implement, and the development in conjunction with the Montana Department of Labor and Industry, a National Career Readiness Certificate. And then finally, we have established a grant steering committee, and very pleased to report that Pam Busey has agreed to co-chair that steering committee along with myself. The committee includes 14 members comprised of industry CEOs, agency, and tribal representatives. And this committee is really going to serve as an advisory committee to the grant, focusing on communication and overall evaluating and looking at the success of the grant and serving as a collaborator between the agencies involved, which include OCHI, the Montana Department of Labor and Industry, and Montana Business and Industry. And we currently have over 50 business and industry partners committed to the grant. So, Mr. Chair, I'll pause there for any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the board? Regent Regala.
First, Dr. Seck, thanks for the presentation. And this is a comment directed towards Director Springer, Dean Wolf, and anyone else who's working on the Swami TAC grant. Regent Krause had a great comment at the November Board of Regents meeting in Bozeman. He says, you know, when you want to paint a barn, you paint it. With federal dollars, you hire an accountant and an administrator first. And he mentioned that 22% of this grant is dedicated to that review process and that implementation. And that's a lot of intellectual capital to be expending. So now's the point to use Regent Krause's verbiage when we actually start painting the barn. And I wish you good speed and energy to work on that, because that's the real difficult part. So thanks for the work so far, but yeah, we're still moving forward. So, yeah.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you, Regent Regala. Further comments or questions from the board?
Sure.
Regent Krause.
You know, so thanks, by the way. Appreciate someone, actually, you know, occasionally. That's great. Tell me what a workforce navigator is.
No one can explain that better than Mr. Springer. So Regent Krause, I would like to ask Mr. Springer to come forward and explain that.
Somebody might ask me that, see, so I need to know it.
Well, thanks for the question. I think the answer is it's a work in progress to some degree. But one thing we've discovered through the overall allocation into the TACT grants at the federal level is this position rise up as a best practice. And really what it is a bridge between the Department of Labor and our college systems. What we found is, even though we work very closely already, that a lot of students get lost in that referral process. Sometimes enrollment is a blockade, sometimes just the physical showing up becomes a barrier for students. And so the navigator really is a hand holder on the front end in terms of working with students. The other thing that we'll have our navigators focus on in the Swami project is working with businesses on the back end. So working with students and businesses and really creating a really robust placement service. So kind of those two main functions. Really.
So maybe I can, we've got another class of high school students leaving, graduating, because that matters. Yeah, and in May, and so the navigators would be in the high schools saying, here are some career paths that you've never seen before in the state of Montana, and this is how you get into them?
That would certainly be one population that we would be working with. The navigators will also work with workers that enter, express interest in these programs through job service.
Yes.
And then also non-traditional students arriving at the colleges would be a third population that those navigators would be working with.
Okay. I once took a class called The World of Work. So, you know, I'd been in the job service I'd been in the world of work for 15 years. But anyway, I hope that this is a very practical application that does go into the high schools and claim those people that we work on that 60% that we just saw a minute ago, that gets in there, that we're making sure we're effective at identifying students and moving them in, because the other two categories are important. Like, you know, I thought I was important in those days. I think, but you know, we saw it in our strategic plan how we can do that, and the more quickly, and that's what I thought a navigator was. But more quickly we can get into the high schools and tell people about these programs, the more quickly we can get into the job services to tell people of these programs, we're going to have something to show for it. We're going to be, the barn will turn red. And so I'm hoping that we see some of that pretty soon, because it's March and May's right around the corner.
Sure. If I may share just two more things. One thing to keep in mind with the Swami project is really the main point of focus from the Department of Labor is on adult students. So while we recognize there's great benefit potentially for our more traditional student population, the focus is really on non-traditional and other adult populations, including veterans and other specific subgroups.
Well, veterans it'll be interesting to see how you do veteran navigation. I meet once a month with the groups, all the groups that serve veterans in the Bozeman area. And I hope we'll be seeing a navigator there soon.
Awesome. And one thing I'd share as well is we've had an opportunity to see the navigators on the ground, piloted by Flathead Valley Community College and Dr. Karras' work there. Those navigators anecdotally feel like they're able to capture about 50% more students than would be the case if the navigators didn't exist. So that bridge seems to be effective, and it seems to be working well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Springer. Seeing no further questions from the board for Dr. Sack, and I see none. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the campus reports, as always, are linked to the agenda. I think that is all we have within the commissioner's report. I'm getting head nods. So, all right, we're ready to move on. We have scheduled a break, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, we moved the other item up, so we probably want to take your break now and then try to get back here as soon as we can and move into the two-year committee.
10:30?
As close to it as we can, I guess.
10:30. 10 minutes.